right. Hello,
Uh,
everyone. Welcome to the first official, like we've done episodes before, but the first official exclusive Off Time episode. I am joined by my friend and new fan of Blur, Jake. Today we're going to be talking about one of my personal diehard favorite bands, Blur. Unlike most discussions where we'll do like an album ranking and like a song ranking, we're gonna do a general more walkthrough beginning to end of their career because Jake is a little too scared to rank the albums. That being said, he's also a new fan, and that's kind of the approach that we're gonna do. Is I'm a diehard of this band. Jake's not quite there yet, but that's the kind of general approach. We're gonna go album by album, talking about one of my favorite bands, Blur. Before we start, Jake, any general thoughts of your recent experiences getting into the best band of the 90s?
yeah, so before doing this, I knew a few Blur songs. I knew some of their popular ones like Song 2 and Coffee and TV and a couple others that Riley introduced to me over the past few months. And I really liked those songs, but never had really dived into the albums. Might have listened to like one or two of their albums, but they didn't click with me back when I listened to them. So really, this was me like this for doing this episode. This was really my first introduction to the whole discography. And I'll be honest, I found a lot to like here. Some of their albums I thought were really strong from start to finish. So I'm looking forward to doing this and sharing my thoughts on these albums. So
Um, my personal journey with the band, I was kind of like Jake a little bit. Like I knew Song 2. Everybody knows Song 2. If you've ever been to a Penguins game, you know Song 2 because they play it every single time they score. Um, but yeah, I really just knew Song 2, maybe a couple off Park Life and Self-Titled. But I wasn't really into them. And then my brother got me into Oasis when I was getting into college. And because Oasis was one of the big Britpop bands, I kind of shifted over. I was like, all right, what does Blur have to offer? And then they kind of they clicked with me a little bit, but they were always a band that was steadily growing in the background of my music taste. And I do mean growing because I like them more and more each time I listen to them. And then around, honestly, a little bit last year, early 2023, I just went full deep dive, loved them, especially Park Life, self-titled, pretty much every album that they had. And then I remember when it came out last year, I actually picked this one up, the Ballad of Darren. I think it's funny because it's the only Blur album I actually own, and
oh
uh, and we'll talk about Ballad of Darren. I think it's solid, but we'll get to it.
yeah,
But and then even after I did the deep dive, they were still growing and growing, and by September 18th, 2024, they are maybe my top five favorite bands of all time. Um,
mm,
Still probably growing because there's more songs I find every day. Like I was just listening to Think Tank before this. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice this one. I actually really like this song. It's
yeah. I also want to quickly mention there's a lot of songs under like the Britpop genre that I really like from bands like Oasis or The Verve or Supergrass, bands like that. But I wouldn't say I've ever really done a full deep dive in any of those bands. So like this was really my first like Britpop band deep dive. Even though there are a lot of songs from bands like Oasis that I do like. So this was interesting to do. So I'm looking forward to this
it's
discussion.
it's funny because when you think of Britpop, at least when I was younger, the only thing I would think of is like the heavy guitars of Oasis.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was like, all right, that must be what Britpop sounds like. It's just heavy guitar music. And then the Verve kind of backed that up a little bit. And then I
Yeah.
listened to Blur and it's just a completely different side of Britpop. And then now when I think of Britpop, like Blur sound like British pop from the 90s. It's just it. And then you listen to more bands like Pulp and it's like, oh, all right, there's more to just like the heavy guitars and like beer anthems from Oasis.
Right. Right. Right.
That being said, I'm a massive Oasis fan.
Yeah.
Um, However, if you ask me which one I prefer, but it's Blur. I love Oasis. Their first two albums are legendary, biblical, as Liam Gallagher would say. And then Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is awesome, but nah, man, Oasis are not Oasis, Blur are incredibly consistent. So do you want to start off with the first album, Leisure, as they would say in the UK?
Leisure. Yeah. You
Leisure,
want,
Leisure.
yeah.
Yeah, so oh my God, not Oasis, Blur. I'm wearing the shirt. Blur kind of started off not really sounding like themselves. They were formed like 87, 88, so it makes sense that they would subscribe to that Manchester sound of bands like the Charlatans, the Stone Roses, the Happy Mondays. They had their first single, She's So High, and it did pretty well. I think it charted to the mid 20s, maybe a little higher than that. I'm not entirely sure. But so then a full album was released, and that was Leisure in 1991. And the best thing I could say is I love this album. I think there's a lot on here, but it doesn't really sound like Blur. Um, I think that the songs like She's So High, There's No Other Way, Bang, and Sing are like some of the best in their entire catalog. But like you compare it to songs that are on Park Life and Modern Life is Rubbish and even self-titled, it does not sound anything like that. She is So High is a great song, but it sounds more like the Stone Roses. Bang and There's No Other Way sounds straight out of a Charlatans album. And Sing honestly is a very shoegazy song. And it's very heavy with some of the production and even some of the B-sides and singles are released, like I Know, very charlatan sounding song. And Inertia, it's not quite blurry yet. But I think it's pretty interesting because this album did pretty well. But at the same time, Damon Albarn says it's like the worst Blur album by a long shot. So I think it's great. I think that the highs on there are some of the highs, and the lows are at worst inoffensive and not really Blur sounding. Standout songs got to be She's So High, Sing, and There's No Other Way.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this one, I agree with Riley that this didn't seem to, as a first time listener of this album, this didn't really sound much like any of their other albums in their discography, especially the ones that like immediately followed it. But yeah, overall, this one, not too much of the material here clicked with me, to be honest. I thought there were a couple of highlights. I think She's So High is a great song, has a really good chorus. I like the production on it. Like Riley said, very Stone Roses esque, for sure, on the production. But yeah, solid song. I wouldn't say it's like a highlight of their catalog for me, but I thought it was a solid track. There's No Other Way I thought was decent. I can see why that was a successful song for them. I like the production on that one. And then the song Sing, I wanted to like it more than I did. I like that little piano part that plays throughout the song, but honestly didn't really go anywhere for me. But I have to re-listen to it because all these songs I've only heard once or twice. So yeah, overall, I don't think it's a bad album. I think there's definitely a few standout tracks, but definitely far from my favorite from Blur, but not a bad debut.
I think it shows a lot of their musicianship really well, though. I think Graham Coxon, and I'll say this a bunch of times throughout, is he's an incredible guitarist. He's like a weird mix between like Jimi Hendrix, but also like Johnny Marr in the way that he plays. Like Johnny Marr is very like I don't want to say jangly, even though he is on a lot of Smith songs. He's a very creative
Yeah.
outside of the box guitarist who's doing some weird riffs that you just wouldn't think of. But at the same time, he has like that heaviness. He has that tone of Jimi Hendrix. And you hear it a lot on songs like Coffee and TV, and which we'll get to. But like even on songs like There's No Other Way from the debut, like he's a pretty inventive guitarist with his riffs. And I think David Roundtree is a pretty good drummer. I think he actually shines the most on this album more than some of the others, simply because the Manchester sound requires that kind of rhythmic drumming that it really shows off his skills. And Alex James is an incredible bassist, and I think Damon Albarn has one of the most unique voices in rock. Period.
Yeah.
He's like a David Bowie with the flow of some whatever the singer's name from the Happy Mondays is. He's like a Bowie with like a rhythmic flow. I think he's a great singer. But yeah, again, this album is just very. It's Blur in their infant stages. They're still like a 3-year-old band. Um, so they still haven't quite found their sound yet. That being said, the next album, Modern Life is Rubbish, is where I think they did. What's pretty interesting is that Modern Life is Rubbish didn't really do so good on Impact. And when you think back on it now and like the in hindsight, it's labeled like one of the like definitive Brit pop albums. They definitely have found their sound on this one. I think they have Damon especially mastered the art of writing a catchy chorus or a catchy hook. Like on For Tomorrow, I think that's like such an incredible chorus. And then even like the last part where he's like spitfire, he's like rapid firing all the little the verses at the very end. I love that one. Um, I think Chemical World is one of Graham's best guitar tones, period. I love the guitar on that one. And I think there's a great melody on it, great catchy, very catchy hook. I think that's something the band just had absolutely mastered even by their second album. In a chemical world, I love that song. Although my favorite probably has to be Blue Jean. I know, Jake, this one is not. I've tried to like push it down your throat. I'm like, you're gonna love Blue Jean. You're gonna love Blue Jean. I know you haven't clicked with it yet.
Yeah, not yet.
It's just an incredible song. I love the guitar on it. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I think it's maybe reversed. I don't know if it's like warped. There's got to be like some sort of like pedal that Graham used. But I think that's like the strongest song on here. And then that one part in the song was like, she don't mind whatever. I think that's very emotive. Um, Star Shaped is really fun. There's always they've also like established this right off the bat with this album. Each Blur album has at least like one punk inspired song on it. Which if you really look at it, it's really funny. I think it's Villa Rose on Rosie on this one. It's definitely very fast paced. I really like that one. That being said, I think that even though this song has really strong highs and it's very consistent, I think by the back half of the album, it becomes a little bit less memorable. I don't think it has the same flow that some of the other albums will have in the future. But that being said, it is, I would say, definitely a massive step up. If I had to pick my highlights, probably For Tomorrow, Blue Jeans, Chemical World, and Villa Rosie.
Yeah, I really enjoy this album a lot. I think it's a big step up from the debut. And yeah, I think it's just a really solid Brit pop album from start to finish. There's a lot of tracks that I really enjoyed, a lot that I see myself coming back to in the future. So some of the standouts for me that I wrote down, the opener For Tomorrow, I think is really strong. I think it has a good melody. Again, the vocal is very British, but I don't mind because the song itself is great. I also really like the strings that come in during the second verse. I've noticed that a lot of Blur songs incorporate strings very well, which is something I like as like an ELO fan and just somebody who's a fan of bands that experiment with strings and violins. And I just think that that's really cool. So I really like that. The second track, Advert, I thought was very strong as well. It really rocks, has great energy to it. I really like the guitar riffs on this one as well. Star Shaped, which Riley mentioned, solid track, kind of like a power poppy sound to it. I like the guitar and backing vocals on this one, as well as the horns that come in during that instrumental section. Chemical World, really great song. One of my favorites from Blur, honestly. Very melodic, really great vocals and backing vocals on this one as well. I can definitely hear a Beatles influence on this track, and I can see why it was chosen as a single. Sunday, Sunday, I thought was a really strong song as well. This is a really good verse melody, and I like the trumpets and horns on this one. That fast sped up section in the middle, I was not expecting at all, but I really like that a lot. I think that was really cool how they did that. And that makes the song stand out more, in my opinion. So I think that's one of the stronger tracks in the album. Miss America, a really haunting ballad. I really like the guitar tone on that one. I think it makes the song very moving, the tone of the guitar and just the slower vibe of it. I really like that track. As Riley mentioned, Villa Rosie, another really strong melody on that one. Really great verses and chorus. I like that faint piano or keyboard that plays in the background. I think it starts during the second verse, but I really like that. It gives it kind of a haunting vibe to it. I thought that was a really cool track as well. So yeah, overall, Modern Life is Rubbish. I really enjoyed this album. I would probably, even though we're not ranking these albums, if I were to attempt to rank them, this would definitely be first or second for me. I think it's a great, really strong album.
I want to shout out producer Steven Street. He was kind of the producer for what is called the Life trilogy, which is Modern Life is Rubbish, Through the Great Escape. He does a great job. I know there's like some speculation that Damon wasn't a huge fan of him, and that's why they kind of ditched him by the time they got to self-titled and I guess like the experimental trilogy. But I think it does a great job. And like you said, the strings are something you really notice with them. They're
Yeah.
very British sounding strings, if that makes any sense, but they fit the songs so well, and they really know when to actually add them into the songs. But
Yep.
it's pretty surprising that like initially like on Impact this album didn't do so great because I think it is like a massive step up and it was definitely signaled what was coming into the British sphere of music or sphere of music.
Yeah.
Uh, that came out, did that come out in 92 or no, that was 93. So the year after, we hit the big one, Park Life. This is widely considered like arguably like the greatest Britpop album period. Um, I think there's a wide variety of sounds on this one compared to Modern Life is Rubbish, which is still a very heavy guitar album. You notice a lot more keyboards, you notice a lot more orchestration, you notice a lot more just sounds.
Mhm.
It starts off with a fucking banger in Girls and Boys.
Yep.
This is Damon flexing his like dance pop influences. There's also a disco influence, which I'm sure Jake really clicked with.
Hmm.
This is one I could totally see like dancing around in like a British club too. There's remixes of this song. It fucking slaps, and I think it has one of the greatest choruses and hooks ever made with the girls who want boys, who dig girls, who dig. Such a catchy chorus. It's one that really gets jammed into your head. I think Tracy Jacks is just all right. I think it's cool. I like that it's like really in your face, but I think it's kind of too in my face, but maybe I'm too American to really click with it. But End of a Century, I love the guitar on that one. And the chorus, again, super catchy is End of a Century. Oh, and I love that one. I and Jake, I have a feeling you won't like this one. I fucking love the title track. Again, that's another one I can like just walk around my house and just waltz around pretending to be British. I forgot the name of the guy that got to do the spoken word, but I think it's so in your face. I love the little line about get off the pork loins, get some exercise. And I think even you would say though that the chorus on that one absolutely hits the
I,
people.
I wrote in my notes, really like the chorus. So
It's like a reverse of county fair for you. It's like you hate
yeah,
the
great,
verses,
right,
but
great,
you love the
great
chorus.
chorus. Versus what I had the issue with, right?
You just don't like any spoken word, do you?
Yeah, and there might be a song or two that have spoken word that I like, but not more often than not. No, I don't.
Would
So
you rather listen to Beaks of Eagles or Park Life, the song?
I would prefer Beaks of Eagles, but I think Park Life is probably objectively the stronger song by quite a bit. But
For our non-good timers, for non-good timers, for the people who just randomly found this, Beaks of Eagles is the fourth, fifth track on Holland.
yeah, in the middle of the
Middle,
California.
middle, middle of the California saga. Listen to Holland, by the way, great
Yep.
album. I would probably put Park Life ahead of it though. Then got Bank Holiday. Sorry, just get back on track. Again, I like this one, although I see it more as filler. But then you have a incredible song in Bad Head. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I can't really. I'm not sure if I want to label this as like a mid-tempo or a ballad. It's like somewhere in between, but it's such a chill song. It's again just memorable songwriting from the group. Debt Collector is another fun one. Same with Far Out. Then you have what's arguably my favorite Blur song to the end. I love the little, I'm not sure if it's keyboard, if it was a synth that they use, but it sounds like the same like instrument that the Brian Wilson used on All Summer Long, the do 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 do, whatever that is, like the marimba or whatever. The dun dun dun, and then it just clicks into the song. The dun, I love the orchestration on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be like a French kind of piece, whatever. But I think it's absolutely incredible. I love the chord progression on it. I think Damon gives a very emotive vocal. It's easily without a doubt one of my top three favorite Blur songs. And then you kind of pick up the pace with London Loves, which has just like such another like dance groove to it. I love the bass line on it. This heavy synths. London Love. I think again, super memorable choruses that only Blur could come up with. It's such a fun track. I think it's a very memorable track because I think I was kind of with you the first time I heard it. I didn't really like it too much, and then I
Yeah.
again kind of stuck in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna listen to it again, and now it's one of my favorite songs for the band. From there, the ones I would probably say I really like Clover Over Dover is pretty cool. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that being said, it's one of my least favorite songs on the album. I don't think there's many misses on here. I don't think there is a miss on here. Magic America is again so in your face, but compared to Tracy Jacks, I actually really like this one. I think the chorus is very memorable. The la 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 la, she's gonna take your Magic America with all the magic people. Um, this is a low is a lot of Blur fans label this their best. I think it's a very emotive song. I think it's really great. I love the chord progression on it. I love the production on it. It's probably not my favorite though, but I still think it's a great song. And I love the little outro with Lot 105. I think that's just like a fun way to end the album. Park Life, it's a classic. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. Jake.
Yeah, so as Riley alluded to, this was an album that I struggled with for a while. This might have been one of the ones that I did attempt to listen to quite a while back. And yeah, it just didn't really click with me when I listened to it back then. But listening to it again for this album ranking or this album review, I guess, I thought it really grew on me a lot. A lot of these songs I really liked actually, and I would probably put it in my top three Blur albums, I would say. Yeah, a lot of songs I really like. The opener, "Girls and Boys," I thought was awesome. Very disco influence, like Riley mentioned. This one took a bit to grow on me. This is one of the ones I do remember knowing like a while back, but it didn't click with me then. But I really like it now. Super catchy chorus, like Riley said, that girls who like boys who like girls just get stuck in your head. And I really like the guitar and the production on this track. And I believe I read it was their highest charting U.S. single, which I don't think is too surprising considering like it's very
At
danceful
the
and
time, yeah, not ever because
oh, oh yeah, there was another. That's right. End of a Century I thought was solid. Has a good melody, very like Beatlesque sounding song. I like that one. I thought the horns were good on that as well. As Riley predicted, yeah, Park Life still hasn't really clicked with me. The spoken verses don't do much for me. Like too British for me, I guess. Doesn't really click, but I do really like the chorus. I think the chorus is cool. Bad Head I thought was really really good. Very melodic, kind of like mid tempo song. I really like the backing harmonies on this one. I think it has a really great chorus. Like you said, Riley, these guys know how to write hooks. Like they're very memorable choruses and hooks, and they get stuck in your head. So really strong song. I would say it's one of my favorites on the album. To the End, I agree with Riley. I think this is a really strong ballad. I love the descending strings on it. I think that's very pretty. And that chorus is so powerful too. So a really strong ballad. And I think the lyrics are very moving too. London Loves, like Riley said, this one didn't click with me right away, but re-listening to it earlier today, I did like it quite a bit. Some nice guitar on it, and I think it's a fun track. Clover Over Dover, pretty strong melody, and I like the guitar tone on that one. I think that's really what makes it stand out for me. And This Is a Low. I think this is a really strong ballad. I actually prefer this one to the end. I love the chorus. I think it's a really powerful and emotive chorus. Great vocals. And yeah, just the production on this one's really good as well. And I think it's a great way to close out the album. So yeah, overall, Park Life, really solid album and one that I'm glad that I re-listened to because again, initially I don't really remember caring for that much on here, but after re-listening, I would say I like well over half the tracks. So really enjoyable album and definitely one that I would recommend, to a new Blur fan like myself. So
yeah, Park Life. It's a classic for a reason. It's definitely a grower for us
mhm.
Americans. I don't, but something that's like really unnoticed, I think, is the Kinks' influence over the group. Because they're in, I guess, even a bit of the Small Faces too. They're unashamedly like British with their sound. I think I think that's kind of the point of Britpop. It's like kind of just being proud of being British and making music about it. And that kind of not kind of, it absolutely carried over to the next one because after Park Life and then definitely maybe being the huge new Britpop sound, the new Britpop albums, um, they were kind of pressured to do very much the exact same thing they did with Park Life. There's the whole like story of their lead single, Country House, being released, and then Damon, the competitive like guy that he was, pushed it to release the same exact day as Oasis's new single. And surprisingly to me, when I first learned about it, Country House won. And keep in mind, the single that was being released was the single from What's the Story, Morning Glory. So like in their heads, Blur kind of had won. Then they played Country House on Top of the Pops, and Alex James, their bassist, had an Oasis shirt on, which is super funny. I'm pretty sure they won like the Brit Award or whatever for Park Life. I think I'm sure some massive Britpop fan can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, and they said something about like, oh, we should share this award with Oasis. And then there's a funny story that I'll get to after we talk about The Great Escape about Oasis's flat back with that. But because of just the general success of Parklife and the rise of Britpop, The Great Escape was released, and it's pretty much an exact replica of Parklife. Pretty much down to like the track order, because you start off with the super up tempo stereotypes. I really like it. It's not my favorite song off the album, but I really love like the guitar on it. I think it's very like in your face, fast paced. I love the song. But what is probably one of my like guilty pleasures about Blur is Country House is one of my favorite songs by the band. And Alex James hates that song. So does Graham Coxon. In fact, I just think most of the members actually hate the song because it was just like them unashamedly falling into the Britpop formula. Kind of like how Mike Love says, like stick to the formula. That's exactly what they did. And when they look back on it, it's not one of their prouder moments, but I think Country House has like one of the greatest hooks from the band.
Yeah.
He lives in a house, a very big house in the country. And it was actually Damon Albarn making fun of himself, kind of like getting rich and kind of being like that art school guy. And compared to like Oasis, who just like lads from Manchester who grew up pretty poor. But Country House fucking slaps. And I love the backing vocals on that one too. And then there's a little breakdown with just the vocals. He's like, "Come, loneliness." Hey, it's a great song. Best Days fucking slaps too. I love that one. Again, I'm gonna say this a ton of times. Great hooks from the band. They have incredible hooks. These are the best. Charmless Man is a pretty cool rip, or like a rip on This Charming Man by the Smiths. It's
Oh, I never
yeah.
made that. I
Well,
never
like that's pretty much where
actually.
like the title comes from, but like not the actual like song.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the first songs I really got into from the band. Is I think it's just like it's so like in your face. It's
Yeah.
it's so cool, and it's like I again great hooks. Fadeaway is pretty solid, but this is kind of where the album kind of starts to slow down for me compared to Park Life, where it's like banger after banger after banger. I feel like the pacing on this one could have been a bit better. Um, I think the Universal is great. That's another one that Blur fans will label as like their best song.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I think it's like not even close to their best song, but it is a very emotive song, and I do like it a lot. Um, and then it slows down even more, and even more. The next like 4 or 5 tracks I just don't care for. I think that this particular album fell victim to the CD era. Because I feel like if you condense this a bit more, it could have been a much better release. That being said, the last 3 tracks, Dan Abnormal, killer. Entertain Me is one of my favorite songs from the album. I think that the chorus is fantastic, and I love the part at the end where there's little like over the chorus, you have Damon just doing a little spoken word, and it sounds really cool. And Yuko and Hero is one that was more of a recent grower on me, but I love the melody on it. I think it's a very mellow track. And unlike Sumahama from LA Light album by the Beach Boys, I actually like the way that I'm pretty sure it's Japanese is used. And Jake, I'm not sure if you caught on to this, but Arnold Same, Globe Alone, and Dan Abnormal are all the band members' names
Oh,
rearranged to make new
oh,
names.
really? Wow.
So Dan Abnormal is Damon Albarn. Um, Globe Alone, that's not Alex James. Who is that? That's not Graham. Okay, whatever. They rearranged the names to make new names,
Yeah.
which I thought it was cool. It's kind of like a Sergeant Pepper's nod. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts on The Great Escape?
I really liked it a lot. There were a lot of songs on here I liked. I can see what you're saying about it being very similar to Park Life in terms of like very melodic and hooky songs with similar production. And yeah, I thought this was a really great album. In terms of the highlights for me, Stereotypes. I know you said you like this song. I actually love this song. I think it's an awesome opener. I love like the new wave sounding keyboard at the start. I think that's really cool. I wasn't really expecting that. And I love that guitar riff that keeps repeating throughout the song, like during the chorus. I think it's really great. So really strong way to open the album. Country House, as Riley mentioned, really great chorus. I like that stripped back bridge with the vocals really prominent. I think that's really cool. And again, really like the use of keyboard and the backing vocals on this song. Best Days, really great ballad. Again, really great use of strings as well. And again, very Beatlesque chorus, and it's a really strong chorus. So really like this song a lot. And I love the use of piano in the second half too. When that piano solo comes in, I think that's very pretty. So Best Day is definitely one of their strongest ballads, in my opinion. Charmless Man, this is my favorite Blur song. I love it. I love the energy to it. I love that fun sing-along chorus, like the na 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 na, and then I guess that's the pre-chorus, and then the chorus after that is awesome as well. So really great song. I love pretty much everything about it, and it's one that I've known for quite a bit now because Riley shared it with me, I think months ago. So really love that song. The Universal, I'm with Riley. I can see the appeal of this song. I think it has a very powerful chorus. I like the strings on it. But it's not my favorite song in the album. I think there's stronger songs on here. It Could Be You, I thought was a pretty strong song, very power poppy kind of sound, which is something that I generally like. I like the backing vocals on it as well. And then the track Entertain Me, this was one of the ones that I re-listened to because it didn't click with me the first couple times I heard it. And it really has grown on me as I've listened to it. I really like that little guitar riff that plays during or after the chorus. I really like that riff. And yeah, just a solid track. So overall, I thought this was a really solid album. I don't love every song on it. Kind of like with Park Life, I don't love every song either. But the songs that I do really like, I think are really great. And I can see why this album was also considered very successful. It did. I think it's a lot of highlights, and some of my favorite Blur songs are on here. So another one I think that's really great for new fans like myself. So
Yeah, I think it's a pretty strong one in terms of the singles. I think it does fall a bit flat though, the more you get through it. I think most of the band was kind of getting tired of trying to repeat what they had before, what was the Life trilogy. And I could see why Graham Coxon said that they should have a stylistic change. Um, but yeah, so a couple of years pass, Britpop starts to die down. There's that thing of Oasis winning like the Brit Awards, and we're like, I think this award should go to all the people. So many people. It's a cool clip if you've ever seen it. I think it's funny. I am an Oasis fan, and I think I love their cheeky humor. But yeah, Britpop's starting to die down, and there's some turmoil inside the band a little bit. Lots of drug problems, of course, as was standard back in the day. Um, it was also, I think, I don't know if this was now or a little bit after, but Damon and his girlfriend Justine from Elastica, I think that's the band, had a falling out, and kind of just the general like stress and all the shit going on led them to do a complete stylistic 180. And they kind of became a bit more Americanized with their sound, which is something that they didn't want back in the day because they kind of hated American music. They weren't huge fans of Nirvana. They weren't big fans of any like the grunge scene, except for Graham Coxon, who really liked bands like Pavement and some of that garage revival that you see back in the day. So, under the guidance of Graham Coxon, the band underwent a complete stylistic change inspired by American indie and garage revival. Um, they recorded in Iceland actually, which I think is pretty funny. I don't know why they went to Iceland, but yeah, so what they ended up with was pretty, my opinion, maybe my favorite album from the band. It's between this and Park Life. Two very different albums, but I love just the general like lo-fi sound of this one. It starts off pretty strong with a very Beatlesy inspired song. I think I told Jake it is a nod to the Beatles, just even when you look at the name. But it sounds a lot like the White Album, and it's Beatlebum, which is, in my opinion, one of the band's best songs. It's probably somewhere in my top five. I think this one is about heroin usage and kind of like weaning yourself off. And then like you have that little line that she's on me. That's just kind of falling back into the routine of taking drugs. Sure, whatever. But I think melodically it's very strong. It's a very emotive song. I love the guitar riff, and the little hook of "and when she asks me look away" is incredible. And then you have the Pittsburgh Penguins' very own song too. If you ever watched the game, and that's what they play when they score a goal. The story behind this one's pretty funny. So they hated grunge. They hated Nirvana, which I love to hate on them too. I like it, but I also love hating on them, especially Dave Grohl, whatever. So what they wrote was basically a mockery of all American grunge formulaic. It's a formulaic grunge song. And then, ironically, because the band hadn't really broken through to America, this was a huge hit in the United States, of course. So it kind of backfired on them in the best way possible, which I think is hilarious. That being said, I think song two is it's a good song. It's a fucking banger. It is great, even if it is supposed to be making fun of the grunge scene. Country Sad Ballad, man. I love the vocal on this one. It's like it's such a stripped back song. It's just like it is such a vibe. I hate using that word, but like that's the best way I can describe it. It's such a vibe. I love the vocals. It's like I love that in it. I think it's a really fun song. MOR, it just
yeah,
rips, and it just rips. It's like not even close to my favorite song on the album, but it fucking rips. On Your Own is classic Blur. This is like combining their new like heavier style with the Park Life and Great Escape similar like chorus and song structure. I think it's great. I think it's a super memorable chorus, and I feel like if this song was released today under some pop artist, it would be a huge hit. Um, Theme from Retro, Jake knows how I feel about instrumentals, so obviously I'm a sucker for this one. I think it's one of the greatest instrumentals I've ever heard. Um, I think it rivals some of my favorite instrumentals like Sleepwalk or Let's Go Away for a While. I think that it's like such a haunting song, and then like the chorus or the hook, I guess, in the song kind of gives you like a glimmer of hope melodically, and I think it's so cool that it does that because I don't think there's many instrumentals that actually kind of do that, switch up the emotions. You're So Great is a super, super depressing song, but I think it's honestly one of the highlights. This was the only song that Graham Coxon has a solo songwriting credit to. He wrote the song completely on his own. And then there's a funny story of, I think it's when they're in Iceland, and he was so scared to sing the vocals. So he hid underneath the table and sang from underneath the table the vocals, which I think is pretty funny. But it's such an emotive song. It's about his dealings with depression because he was a very depressed guy, and you'll see this more and more as you get on through the 90s with the band. Super depressed guy. You even see him in like the music videos. He's always reserved. I think the it's either the Country House music video or one of the other hits from Great Escape where he like the whole band's just up front singing the song in the video, and then you see Graham like on the corner on the side of a wall in the music video just strumming the guitar. It's because he just didn't want to be up there. So I think this song, You're So Great, is incredible. This is the most lo-fi they probably get. I think it's just acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and a vocal that was meant to sound like it does sound like it was sung underneath the table. It's very like compressed, not compressed, the opposite of compressed. It's like it's muddy. It's a muddy
Yeah.
vocal.
Yeah.
And there's like this little like record scratch going on in the background the entire time. I think it sounds really cool. One of the highlights from the catalog. Death of a Party sounds very David Bowie. I really like this one. I love the use of keys on it combined with the heavy guitars. I think it's also one of the highlights of the album. Chinese Bombs is a really cool like punk inspired track similar to like MOR. It's pretty fast paced, as I said. Each Blur album has to have that punk song. I'm Just a Killer for Your Love is one that's still growing on me, but I think it's just an incredible song. It's super underrated in the band's catalog. And then Strange News from Another Star is where Damon's Bowie influence goes through the roof. It's straight out of like it's a mix between Bowie's sound on Low and Bowie's sound on Ziggy Stardust, and I think it's super cool. I love the mention of the Death Star. I think that's pretty funny. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so of course I'm gonna like it. But it's a heavy song. I just think it's incredible. Moving On's okay, and Essex Dogs is I really love the spoken word. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, especially when it's done right. So all in all, I think this band's lo-fi sound mixed with like the Americanized heavy guitars, it was the right direction for the band. I'm a sucker for it. I think this is an incredible album. Can go on and on about each song, but all it's still at heart a Blur album. It's very melodic. It has incredible hooks. It just has a bit new production, which I is probably my favorite Blur album. I
Hmm.
mean, I know I said like next to Park Life, but more I talk about it, it's probably my favorite Blur album. So self-titled, Jake.
Yeah, so this one, it's still growing on me, I will say. I don't like it quite as much as I do like their Britpop trilogy, if that's what you want to call it. But I still think there's a lot of really solid songs on here. Some highlights from the catalog for sure. So some of the highlights for me, I think Beetle Bum, which is the opener, is really strong. Really like the melody on this one and the production. Again, great backing harmonies as well that come in about a minute into the song. I really like those as well. Song two, like Riley mentioned, their most popular song in the US. I like it. Very heavy, loud production on it, but it works for me. And the chorus rocks, of course. So that's a great song. MOR, I really like this one too. Great energy to it. I like how the verses build up to the chorus, and I like the back and forth vocals in the chorus, like the "I'm a boy and you're a girl." I really like that a lot. I like the guitar in this one as well, and I'd say it's one of my favorites on the album. On Your Own is one that didn't click with me right away, but it is growing on me. I think it has some pretty cool production and like guitar effects on it. And yeah, I think it's a decent track. You're So Great. I'm with Riley. I think this is a highlight of the Blur catalog. I love the more stripped back acoustic sound of this one. The vocal, like Riley mentioned, has kind of a muddy lo-fi sound or quality to it, which I really do like. And yeah, it's a great melody, and I love the electric guitar solo and the tone of the guitar on this one too. So, a really sad, melancholic vibe to it, but really great song. Look Inside America. I really like the strings on the verses of this one. I wouldn't say it's my favorite on the album, but I think it's a decent track. And then Strange News from Another Star. Again, not a favorite of mine from the album, but I think it's a pretty solid ballad. I think it has a strong chorus, and I like the production on it, kind of a haunting vibe to it. So overall, this album, again, it's not quite up there with the albums of their Britpop trilogy, the three that preceded this one, but it is growing on me. And I think that there definitely are some really strong highlights on this one. So, and it is cool how this has a more distinctive and different sound from those, where this one sounds more like American influence, like more like that American indie rock kind of sound on some of these songs. So I do like it.
Yeah, if I didn't say my top three for this one, Beetle Bum, You're So Great, and
MOR?
no, not MOR. I know you love that one.
Yeah, it's great.
Probably either between Theme from Retro or Strange News from Another Star. But
Hmm.
you know I'm a sucker for that shit. All right, so they kind of continued with the experimental sound. I think this especially is when Damon's like relationship troubles with Justine kind of came to like full full effect because they did split. I don't know the exact date. I'm not a Damon Albarn biographer. There's people out there in the Blur community that definitely know the exact date. And then more drug troubles with heroin and uppers, and just kind of like general band shit. People go on drugs, people break up with their girlfriends. They get really fucking depressed. So what they did was arguably one of the most depressing albums of all time, 13. This one has pretty much become like the sunflower of Blur's catalog for Beach Boys fans. That's the best way I could describe it. Or even like Pet Sounds level, because there's this one has its fans. It's people's like favorite from the band. And like for most people, it's like not even close. That being said, it's not my favorite. I think it's a great album, and I feel like Jake's gonna have the same thoughts as me on it. It starts off really strong with Tender, which is like this gospel rock ballad. I love the way it builds up. I do think it deserves to be about like 7.5 minutes. Jake might like this one if it was like 3.5. I think it's very soulful and it's another song about trying to get through drug troubles. Like you can basically like you can get through it kind of thing. I love it. I think the chorus is really strong. I love the way it builds. I feel like this is like the ultimate like bar song. Like Oasis is known for their like bar anthems where like these are drinking songs that you can be with your friends and enjoy that shit. This is basically Blur's version of it. I love Tender. There's a version out there with Noel Gallagher, um, Damon Albarn, and Paul Weller, all three of them together singing the song. Is for some sort of charity event, which I think is funny because you got Paul Weller on drums and then Noel and Damon trading verses. Like you would never think in a million years that Noel Gallagher would sing Blur's Tender, but I think Tender is a great song and an incredible way to open the album. It's also a super misleading way to open the album because the next song is called Bugman. Um, Shout out Bugman Radio. Listen to Bugman Radio Fridays at 11. This song is super fucking heavy. The guitar tone is like really in your face, scratchy. I can almost it's like you can almost like feel it like scratching at you. But I love it. I think the vocals on it are awesome. It's about a drug dealer. That's the Bugman. The said Bugman is a drug dealer. So maybe I shouldn't use that for my radio show name, but I think it fucking rips. And then it goes right into another one of my favorite, maybe arguably my favorite Blur song, period, Coffee and TV. I love the guitar on this one. I said, if you learn how to play the song on guitar, it's a very inventive way of using chords. So shout out Graham Coxon. It starts off a little slow with the dun dun dun, and then it goes right into it. I think the chorus is super Beatlesy. It's like, so give me coffee and tea. I could see like George Harrison doing a little head shake to it. Um, I think the chorus is incredible. The song is 6 minutes, but it doesn't feel like it's 6 minutes. It's just super catchy all the way throughout. I love Graham's inventive guitar solo on it. Without a doubt, I would say it's probably my favorite Blur song. The next one is Swamp Song. Like another one I really love, similar guitar tones to that of Bugman. I also like that line, "Give me space brain." I don't want to go into further details about it, but I think it's a really fun line, very cheeky line. Very similar to Bugman. I really like it. It's super heavy and it doesn't go on longer than it needs to. It's just another energetic song. 1992 is the start of the very depressing part of this album that kind of just goes on for the rest of the album, honestly. A little slow. I think it's great though. I'm not a huge fan of Blur EMI though. I know that's like the shout out to like the record company or whatever, and I appreciate that, but I'm not a big fan. Battle's cool. Mellow song is pretty cool. I love the way the keyboard creeps in halfway through the song. It's almost reminiscent of what Damon would do with Gorillaz, even though I'm not a big fan of Gorillaz. Trailer Park, I like the shout out to I Lost My Girl to the Rolling Stones, and I think it's cool. And yeah, I think for most of the rest of this album, honestly, just the rest of this album, it just kind of it's cool. I like it. I think it's catchy in parts, but it's not close to my favorite stuff from the band. That being said, No Distance Left to Run is absolutely incredible. I love the guitar on that one. Very depressing song. And especially when you know like the backstory behind what was going on with the band at this time, it's incredible. Yeah, and I think this whole album is incredible. I can see why it's like a classic amongst the Blur fans and why I do say like if somebody told me their favorite Blur album was 13, I could totally get behind that. It's not my personal favorite. I think this is also one that needs to grow on me though. The first half though, that run of songs from Tender through 1992 is arguably unmatched in the band's catalog to me. So 13. Highlights, Coffee and TV, Bugman, and Tender.
Yeah, so this album for me, definitely quite a bit different than the albums that preceded it. It's more like kind of experimental with like electronic sound, art rock kind of. So it's definitely not as melodic in some places, although there definitely are some very melodic songs on here as well. But yeah, this one definitely still growing on me. I think this one more kind of challenges my usual taste in music because I'm a guy that really likes melody and harmonies and stuff like that. Where this one definitely leans more into like the production side of it, experimenting with, like I said, like with electronic music and stuff. So there's some stuff on here that doesn't really click with me, but there's also some songs I really like. So the opening track, Tender, this one I can see the appeal of it. I get why it's popular. It doesn't do too much for me at this point. I don't, the chorus, it's kind of like that anthem type chorus where they repeat, come on, come on, come on. Doesn't do too much for me. I do think, as Riley mentioned, the song's a bit too long. But I do think it's a really great lead vocal though on it. So I do think it's a solid track. Uh, Bugman, not my favorite song, but I do appreciate the heavy production. It does get a little too heavy for me by the middle of the song, but I can see the appeal of it. I get why people like this one.
Not your favorite song, but it better be your favorite radio station or favorite radio show.
It's up there, man.
Oh,
Uh,
fuck you.
Coffee and TV. I'm with Riley on this one. I think this is an awesome song. One of my favorite Blur songs. Love the melody on it. Like Riley said, very Beatlesque. And just great vocals too. I can see why it's one of their most popular songs. And this is the Blur song I've probably known the longest. I've known it for probably at least 2 or 3 years now. So really great song. Swamp Song in 1992. I think both these songs have very cool production. 1992 was kind of this cool like droning sound on it, which is very neat. But as songs, they don't really do much for me. But I do think they sound very cool production wise. The track Battle, from what I've seen, this seems to be like a fan favorite. It doesn't do too much for me personally. But I'm with Riley on No Distance Left to Run. I think this is a very moving song, very moving, kind of slower track, very heartbreaking lyrics. And I really like the guitar playing and the guitar tone on it as well. So, and great backing vocals too. So, the rest of this album I didn't mention, didn't do too much for me personally. So I'm still kind of a far away from getting to a point where I can listen to this album as a whole again. But there definitely are some really strong tracks on here, and I can see why it's a fan favorite. I can see why a lot of people like this one. But for me, I think it's more so a taste thing. I value melody and harmonies and stuff more than I do electronic experimentation and stuff that they're doing on this album. So, but I do respect this album. I think there's a lot of good tracks on it, and I could see it growing on me more just once I have the chance to listen to it more. But I'm not quite there yet for me.
I'd be I do want to mention the music video to Coffee and TV is one of the coolest music videos I've ever seen. It's yeah, the Coffee and TV is just an incredible song, especially since it's like
Yeah.
it's a cool way to approach like the usual like I'm on drugs. How do I get off drugs kind of song. Like you'll see songs like Cold Turkey by like John Lennon, like stuff like that. And then you
Yeah.
see a song, it is very different approach to that. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah. I do think it's by far the most accessible song on the album too. I think if somebody heard that one and thought the rest of the album would sound like it, they'd be a little surprised to find it really doesn't. A lot of these tracks are very experimental, and a lot of different like sound textures and things going on this album. So not really reflective of the whole album, but I think it's a highlight of Blur's catalog, and it's one that I really love. So
Yeah. All right. So they wouldn't have another album for 4 years. The band was kind of in shambles. I mean, obviously, I've mentioned like a lot of the alcohol and drug and alcohol usage. Even Graham Coxon actually went to rehab for a good amount of time. And then they kind of got around. They like started solo projects. Damon Albarn started a small project called Gorillas. Might not have heard of it. Which I think is worth a mention because I'm not a huge fan of Gorillas.
yeah.
I get the appeal, and I do like a couple of songs, but I don't know. I feel like with the Damon Albarn fans, it's usually one or the other. At least from what I've found. I am very much in the Blur camp. I think Gorillaz, Noel Gallagher said it best. Keep in mind, Damon Albarn and Blur are one of my most influential artists, one of my favorite bands of all time. I think Noel Gallagher hit the nail on the head when he said it's music for 12-year-olds.
Shout out on Melancholy Hill though. That's an all time.
That's a great. There is good stuff in Gorillaz, but like,
Yeah. It's very, very different. Very different. I think it's kind of, would you say it's kind of a way for Damon to kind of like experiment with different
absolutely.
styles that he couldn't do with Blur pretty much? I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty
because
much.
there was a like constant like argument of like how should we approach this music, whatever. Like it took a lot of convincing from Graham for Damon and the rest of the group to just go do like the Americanized or American influence stuff that you got on self-titled in 13.
Mhm,
Um, so I feel like Damon, who wanted to do other stuff with more electronic based music, that's why how he's able to get across with the Gorillas. And
mhm.
I do like Clint Eastwood a lot. I feel like that's a really cool song, and I really like On Melancholy Hill, but
Yeah. Feel
minus
good. Feel good.
Feel Good Inc.'s
Feel
obviously
good
a
ink. Yeah. Yeah.
great song, but besides those three, it's
Yeah.
Slim Pickens. Not really, not a fan. So that kind of leads us to Think Tank. This one's pretty easily my least favorite from the band. I know I said we weren't doing a rankings, but this would be the first time I would talk about because it's my number nine. I don't think it's. To be fair, I do like a good amount of songs on here. I like the influence from other artists. There's a little bit of jazz, like dance music and like hip hop influence on it. And usually I really appreciate that stuff, but I really love the direction they were going with self-titled and 13. Um, this one, there's just not a whole lot of like going on it's super consistent, but it's like consistently like 7 out of 10 songs. So like I really like Sweet Song. I think the melody on that one's really strong. And I love the little like faint drum beat in the back that's really cool. I think Brothers and Sisters is really cool. I really like that one. I love Moroccan People's Revolutionary Bowls Club. Hell of a name for a song. But besides those, it's just like nothing super memorable, nothing I'm really going to come back to. I think it's really important to note that what I consider one of the like most important members of the band, they're all important, but like Graham Coxon was out of the band at this point. He had a lot of trouble with alcohol and just creative choices, and all in all, he wasn't with the band anymore. He reunited with them years after. He came back around the 2008 2009 reunion, but his presence is noticeably gone because I feel like he added a little spice of like creativity to a lot of the songs that he was a part of, which was pretty much all of them. So, highlights. I already said Sweet Song, Moroccan People's Revolutionary Bowls Club, and Brothers and Sisters, but this is worth a listen because this one's kind of like the how would I say this for you, Jake? It's like the Beatles for sales fans. It's like it has its fans. It's just I'm not
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of with Riley on this one. This album didn't really impress me that much. Again, though, I think part of that is also a taste thing. Again, it's kind of them doing a style that I'm not really, they're not really leaning into the Britpop here. They're kind of still experimenting a bit. So not really my thing totally, but there's a couple songs I thought were solid. I thought Good Song is pretty decent. I really like the backing vocals on this one during the chorus, very like almost Beach Boys esque, which I thought was pretty cool. I thought the vocals are very nice on that one. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's one I really come back too much. We've Got a File on You has some cool kind of punk energy to it, but it's a really short song. I think it's over in like under 2 minutes, so it's very quick song.
It's like a minute 13.
Yeah, very quick. So kind of over before it starts. And then, as Riley mentioned, Sweet Song. Really like the production on this one. Has a very kind of soft and dreamy kind of sound to it. But again, I wouldn't really say it's one that I'd come back to regularly. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about this album. It didn't really stand out to me, and I know it seems to have its fans from what I've read, and I know Riley said it has its fans, but for me personally, this isn't one I really see myself coming back to, and it's not one I really see growing on me either. So,
Then it's no shock that the band kind of just split pretty much like right after. But they did come back together in 2009 after Graham got better, and then he started like doing some stuff with Damon, and the band eventually just fully reunited. And there's like a little like concert film from like 2009, 2010 that was like pretty huge. That was like the Oasis reunion, except like because like Blur was always kind of together. And they just did a bunch of shows in between, and then around like 2013 they did a show in Japan. However, the festival that they were doing at was canceled, so the band was kind of stranded in Hong Kong. And what else to do in Hong Kong when you're stranded there? Then write a whole entire album. So that's what they did. And then in 2015, 2 years later, you have the release of the Magic Whip. I at first listened to this one, I didn't care for it at all. I thought it was just like your standard reunion album. And then I listened to it again, honestly, a couple of weeks before doing the this whatever we're calling this album discussion
yeah.
thing. Um, and it totally clicked with me. I think it's way more consistent than Think Tank. I think it's kind of back to super melodic songwriting, super catchy hooks. Even on songs that I just don't care for in general, like Ice Cream Man or Thought I Was a Spaceman, I still think the hooks are there, and I think it's just like it's a great album. I know Fantano gave this a 7 out of 10, so that means it's one better than Sabrina Carpenter's new album, Short and Sweet. So we have that win. Um, Hell yeah, I'm with it, man. I think that Go Out is classic Blur. Going back to that's similar to like On Your Own. It's like a combination of like all their styles, but like the actual execution is just classic Blur. My Terracotta Heart is super like groovy. I really love that one. Ghost Ship is super groovy. I think the hooks are there. I love it. I love the mention of the album title with the Magic Whip in there, although I'm sure that's where they got the album title. But Ghost Ship's like the easy highlight for me. That one has 65 million streams on Spotify, by the way, so I can totally see why that one's like really popular amongst fans. Pyongyang is really cool. Ong Ong, I love the piano on that one. I think this whole album is very much a return to form in the sense of songwriting and just writing catchy hooks, but it also kind of continues the production influence from Think Tank. Because I do really like the production on Think Tank, but the songwriting wasn't there. I feel like this is that with good songwriting. I love the Magic Whip. It's not my favorite Blur album. I think there's about five ahead of it, but I do really like it.
Yeah, so I think this album is a step up from Think Tank. There's definitely stronger songs on here, in my opinion, but it's still not one that has really clicked with me as a whole. I wouldn't say there's a bad song on it, but it's more so just I think there's only a few standouts for me, and the rest is just kind of there. But in terms of those standouts, I thought Lonesome Street was a decent opener. I wouldn't say I'd come back to it that often, but I thought it was a solid way to start the album. My Terracotta Heart, I thought was a pretty solid ballad, has kind of a melancholic vibe to it. Thought that was a decent track. For me, Ghost Ship, like Riley said, that's the highlight for me as well. Very funky kind of song, very different from a lot of the other songs that I've heard from Blur. But I really do like it. I like the production on it. I like the sound of the guitar. I think this is a really solid track. And yeah, Ong Ong, I think is probably my favorite song on here. It's very melodic. So it's not that surprising that I like it. That's kind of the main thing that I prioritize in music. And I really like the guitar and the piano that comes in during the second half as well. I think it's very nice how they incorporated that. And yeah, it's a strong track. So yeah, this is an album again, as a new fan. This is one I've only heard once or twice all the way through. So definitely need to give some of these songs another listen. But at this point, it's just an okay album for me with a couple of standout tracks. So not
Would
my
you rate
favorite.
it honestly? Would you rate it better than Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet?
Probably, yeah. Probably,
That's
yeah.
not a
Yeah.
strong, okay, that's not a very strong probably, but
I think Ghost Ship is stronger than anything on the Sabrina Carpenter album. So
fuck yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, they didn't really do a whole lot after that in terms of like new music. When I say like not a whole lot, they didn't until the one that I bought on release, Ballad of Darren, 2023. There's again when I first spun this one on my um whatever the fuck, what do they call like the suitcase record players, and granted I still haven't gotten a new receiver, so like it's really hard to play on the good one, but that being said I didn't have that back then. I just spun this one. I did not care for it. I regretted the purchase. That was like when I first like actually listened. Then there's this new documentary about the band reuniting to make this album and go on tour again in 2023. And the documentary is called To the End, and it's like one of the most like emotional documentaries I've ever seen. It's just like how the band went through all this like pain and stuff in the late 90s and then finally reuniting later on. And then you see like them like crying while making this record, and it I wouldn't say it totally clicked because I don't think it's the strongest from the band, but the moments on here that are emotional became way more emotional for me. I think The Heights is honestly the best song on here. I think it's super emotional. The Narcissist is one that usually gets the shout out. I thought that was pretty good. Not as good as The Heights, but again, pretty emotional. St. Charles Square absolutely fucking rips. I think that's probably my highlight next to The Heights. I think it's again like that punky style. Um, but after that, there's not a whole lot going on for me on this one. I think it is pretty consistent. I still think it's better than Think Tank. Um, Fantano gave this a strong six compared to Sabrina Carpenter's short and sweet standard six. So still better. I'll take it. But yeah, it's a late period album. Like The Magic Whip was a super strong reunion album. I would argue it's one of the strongest reunion albums of all time, in my opinion. This is kind of more of what you expect though from like your standard reunion album. But I still really like it. I could see it growing on me. It definitely is their easily their shortest album. It's like half an hour. Um, and I think it is really concise. Definitely warrants a couple more listens from me, but it is my least listened to album, even next to Think Tank. So
yeah, so this album, I only listened to it once all the way through, and then I might have listened to a few other songs on there twice. Yeah, it didn't really do much for me personally. I thought I didn't really write that much for it. I thought Russian Strings was all right. I thought Faraway Island was all right, and I think the Everglades for Leonard I thought was probably my favorite, the best song for me. I really like the production on it with the strings. But other than that, not too much really stuck with me. Like Riley said, it kind of comes off as a later period band album. I don't think there's really a bad song on it, but just not a lot here really clicked with me. So um, I don't know if I would say I prefer it to Think Tank. I have to listen to both more, but not one that I really was a big fan of on first listen. So I probably need to give it some more listens before I can really give a full comments on it. So yeah, didn't do much for me.
all right. I know you said you didn't want to do like an album ranking, but if you had to do like a top three, I'll do top three with you. What would
Okay.
you label your top three?
My top three would probably be the Britpop trilogy. I would probably say, I would say my favorite. Oh, it's close because they're all very close for me because they all have really strong highlights. They all have a few tracks I'm not crazy about. I would say, well, let's share yours first, Riley. Let's hear your top three.
So I do want to do like a full band retrospective deep
Yeah,
dive. I'm talking like an hour long solo video. Whenever I get my channel started up, it's a college is busy, man.
yeah.
But if I had to do a top three, you know what? Fuck it. I'll give you my top five. You could do a top three. Top five, number five, Modern Life is Rubbish. Highlights Blue Jeans and Chemical World. Number four, The Great Escape. Highlights Yuko and Hero and Country House. Number three is 13. Best songs, Coffee TV and Bugman, of course. Number two is Park Life to the End and Girls and Boys are the best ones. And then number one is self-titled Blur with Beetlebum and You're So Great.
All right, for me, I'm not going to say the highlights, but number three for me would be The Great Escape. Number two, I would say would be.
You could do whatever the hell you want, man. No
I'm
one's gonna.
not debating whether I would rank. I'm going to say Modern Life is Rubbish 2 and Park Life 1.
That's
That's my top three.
all right. So the next thing we're gonna do is a pseudo greatest hits draft, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
However, unlike our, I guess, mother channel, good timing,
Yeah.
where we're like if we vote. Well, there's only two of us, so we can't vote.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would. What I want to do is instead we're just gonna each give go back and forth one song, and it gets on no matter what, and then whatever we get, we get.
Yeah. And we're going to do how many songs each? We're going to do 10.
10, but we're gonna go back and forth, and once the song is said, obviously you can't say it, so we're gonna have some
Yep.
backups.
All right.
We're gonna try to go in order.
All right.
It matters. Do you want to start?
All right. Well, if we're going to go chronologically, I'll start out with Chemical World from Modern Life is Rubbish. I think it's a very melodic song. Like I said, very strong chorus and vocals, great backing vocals. And yeah, I can definitely hear the Beatles influence on it. So I think it's a really strong track. One of the highlights from Modern Life
Nothing
is Rubbish.
from Leisure? Nothing?
No, she's
Damn.
so high. She's so high. I would consider that was it.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna say There's No Other Way from Leisure because I feel like that has Graham's guitar and it'd fit in great on a greatest hits album. And I'm sure if we have more at the end, I can go and do my second pick from Leisure. But damn, I'm just shocked. Holy fuck. I thought you would have really like loved She's So High, where like I thought that would be like one of your favorites. Wow. All right.
Um, Second track for me, I'm going to say Sunday Sunday from Modern Life. I think it's a really strong track. I think it has a really good verse melody, and I like the use of I think it's trumpets or horns on it. And I love that really fast, sped up section in the middle that kind of just comes out of nowhere. So I think that makes this track really unique and it makes it stand out from some of the other songs in the album. So really strong, I guess, rocker from the band. So or mid tempo, yeah.
Yeah, Sunday Sunday is a good one. I'm gonna go with um Blue Jeans. You probably saw this one coming. It's one of my favorite songs from the band. I think it's a very mellow and relaxed song. I love the guitar on it. I'm not sure what effect is being used, as some sort of tremolo or whatever, but I think it sounds great. And I love that little chorus section or that hook of "She Don't Mind." I think that's one of their best hooks. It's very like underwhelming in terms of like their hooks, but I think it's like underwhelming in the sense where it's just like so laid back and chill. I love it. I think Blue Jeans is one of their best songs, period.
All right, so song number three for me, I'm gonna go with "Girls and Boys" from Park Life. Again, really great opening track to the album, very disco influenced, and I'd say it's one of my favorite Blur songs. I love the catchy chorus melody and great production on it and great guitar as well. So definitely one of the highlights of the catalog for me, "Girls and Boys."
I have a feeling you're gonna say to the end, so I'm gonna give. Should I do this? Should I do the title track? You know what? No, no. I'm gonna make this one so even Americans can get into the band. So I'm gonna say End of a Century. I think that the guitar on this is really cool. I love the little opening, the dun 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 dun, and then I think the chorus is very Beatles-esque. And I hate using that to kind of describe the band Blur, but it is very Beatles-esque,
Yeah.
60s inspired. But I think the it's just a great song, and it shows an example of just how they have an endless amount of great hooks. So End of a Century.
Fourth song for me, we're gonna go with "Bad Head" from Park Life. I think this is a very melodic, kind of mid-tempo song. Like I said, really like the backing vocals and harmonies on this one, and I think it has a really strong chorus. So one of my favorites on Park Life. I think it's a really, really great track.
All right. Then I'll say it to the end. I love the production on this one. I love it's super strings heavy. I love the little like marimba or whatever the fuck that instrument is. The little touches like the dun 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 dun. I love the music video to this one too. I think it's a very emotive song. It ranks as my number two favorite Blur song. It's my favorite from Park Life. Just looking at my actual list, I just think it's great. It's one of the first songs that got me into the wider catalog of the band. And to this day, it's one of my most streamed songs this year. I know that. next to Girls and Boys and You're So Great. So
All right, number 5 for me, I'm going to go with another strong ballad from Park Life. I'm going to go with This Is a Low. I think this is a really, really strong ballad. Probably my favorite ballad that I've heard from Blur so far. I think it has a really powerful chorus and vocals, and I really like the production on it. I think it's a masterpiece of a song, and I think it's a highlight of Park Life. So,
just letting you know that this is going to be the last song of disc one. We are at 10 songs. So
okay,
you want
gotcha.
to make disc two like, I don't know, do you want to end with Park Life or do you want to just go straight into The Great Escape? I can go with whatever.
We're gonna divide them up then, and why don't we end with Park Life? Yeah.
Ooh, I could do London Loves or Magic America, but you know what? I'm actually gonna go back to the debut. I'll shoehorn this one in. Sing. Uh, this song is very emotive. I love how heavy it is. It's one of those songs that doesn't rely so much on lyrics and vocal performance to make it super emotional. Liam Gallagher said that this was a song that he wished that he had written. He's like, well, this is his favorite Blur song before. I think it's just a really powerful song. I love how it gets more and more heavy at the end, and it shows that even back when they were like starting off and not entirely Blur yet, that they still could write incredible songs. So I'm gonna say "Sing" from the debut.
All
And
right.
there, this is a low ends the side, which I think is pretty fitting.
All right. So to kick off, I guess disc 2, I'm gonna go with the opener from The Great Escape, Stereotypes. I think this is an awesome opening track. Like I said, really like the new wave kind of sounding keyboard and the synth in the beginning of the song. I wasn't really expecting that, and I also love that guitar riff that repeats throughout the chorus. I think it's a really fun song, really strong opener as well, and I think it's great vocals from Damon as well. So
Yeah, stereotypes. I love the guitar on that one. It's
yeah,
super.
it's a guitar for sure. It's that
I could see you liking that. It's like super power poppy.
yeah, very very much so. Yeah, yeah.
You're probably gonna say Country House or Charmless Man, but I want to shoehorn in one of my favorites again. An underrated track. I'm gonna say Entertain Me. I think I really love this one. It's kind of reminds me of Girls and Boys with some of the production on it. I love the hook. It's so simple, but it's just them yelling, "Entertain me," and then at the very end, Damon has like the special touch where he's just like adding in like a semi-spoken word verse into it. It's so cool. Um, I love the verses on it. It reminds me a lot of Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls a lot.
Mm.
I really like it, so I'm gonna say
It made
Entertain Me.
it made me think of that song "That's Entertainment" by the Jam. Right? Isn't that a song by the Jam?
That is a
Something.
song by Paul Weller in the gym, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to re-listen
Um.
to that Entertain Me though. It's just a great one, man.
I'm gonna go with my favorite. I would say my favorite Blur song for my 7th track, "Charmless Man" from The Great Escape. Love this song. Like I said, love everything about it. I think it has great verses. Love the pre-chorus. Love the chorus, and just a really, really fun song. Very like kind of like summery vibe to it. I would say it's one I could picture like listening to by the pool or something. Just a really fun song. So that's my next song.
Yeah, Charmless Man. It's so much fun. Since I know some of the ones you're probably gonna say, I'm gonna skip ahead so I can get some self-titled representation. Not even gonna say Beetlebum because I'm sure you're gonna say that one too. I'm gonna go with You're So Great. This is a very emotional song. The melody is very strong, but it's honestly the best part about it is something that's very rare for me in a song, and it's Graham Coxon's vocals. They sound so desperate, so depressed. In a song that's about depression, I feel like it perfectly captures that kind of mood if you've ever gone through that sort of thing. But even like past that, it's just like such a great lo-fi track. So You're So Great by Blur, and more specifically, Graham Coxon.
All right. Next song for me, I'm gonna go with "Best Days" from The Great Escape. This one, like I said, really grew on me as it went on. I really like the use of strings during the verses. I think it has a very good chorus. Reminds me a lot of the Beatles. And I really like the piano towards the end as well. So really great song. Another really strong ballad from Blur. So
All right. So I have three left. I want to get since you're not gonna go super into 13 and we'd get pissed off. People get pissed off if we didn't. I'm gonna throw out Coffee and TV.
yeah,
This
yeah.
is my favorite Blur song by a country house, not a country mile, a country house. Um, I had to get at least one pun in there.
Uh,
Um, it's and not that because I love some of my favorite songs from the band are like some of my favorite songs of all time, but Coffee and TV is just that song is just like incredible songwriting, incredible production, great vocal from Graham. Shout out him. I think he's an underrated vocalist with the band. He's only had like a couple of songs he got lead vocals on. Um, I think the guitar riff on it is awesome. Yeah, it's just so full of hooks, and that chorus of "Give me coffee and TV" is just absolutely incredible. So, coffee and TV.
All right, so I'll make you happy here, Riley. I'm gonna nominate Beetle Bum. I think it's a really strong opener to their self-titled album. I really like the melody on it and the production, and really love the backing harmonies as well that come in about a minute into the song. So really strong track.
Hell yeah, man! I fucking love Beetlebum.
All right.
I got two left.
Yep.
Oh man, because I really want to get a song from Magic Whip out there. Uh, I probably still can. Let's go with Spell Out 13 with Bugman. Kind of have to do this one on account of it being the name of my radio show. But I think it's a really heavy song. It's one of those like era definers for the group. It's them experimenting more with that like heavier sound, and there's also just some like great production on this one. I know you said the guitars are a little bit too loud and it's a lot for you, but personally I think it's kind of them going to the walls, cranking it to 11 with the stuff that they were going through at that time. So Bugman, throw out Bugman.
All right, the last song I'm going to nominate for our Fantasy Greatest Hits album, I'm going to nominate MOR from the self-titled album. I really love this song. It really rocks. Love that chorus, like the I'm a boy and you're a girl. And I really like the guitar on this one as well. I think the song just really rips. And one of my favorites from the self-titled album, one of the first ones that clicked with me when I was listening to it. So that's my last song.
Dude, I don't think any of the I didn't expect MOR. I knew you liked it. Holy
I like it.
Oh, this is gonna be tough because I want to give some shout outs to the newer stuff, but I also seeing as this is gonna be the closer to our greatest hits. Uh
Country House still isn't done if you want to put it on.
it could be a bonus track.
If not, you could do maybe Ghost Ship from Magic Whip.
I'm gonna go with the closer I'm gonna go Tender. I think would be a good closer. Um I know it's the first song on 13, but to close out what is the greatest hits of Blur, I feel like that's probably the way to go. I know we got nothing from Think Tank or Magic Whip. However, we are in the CD era and we can only have 20 songs to fit out like a hour and 20-minute album, and it's the best we can do. So I think Tender's just a great song though. I think it's very powerful in the right way. It's very gospel-y. It's a song about pushing through like some hard times with like drug addiction or like splitting with your wife and stuff. So I think it's just a great song. It's kind of like Sail on Sailor by the Beach Boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't go 5 minutes without mentioning the Beach Boys, but I think so. All right, here's our one disc greatest hits by Off Timin. Starting off, There's No Other Way, Sing, Chemical World, Sunday Sunday, Blue Jeans, Girls and Boys, End of a Century, Bad Head, To the End, and This Is a Low. And if we're pushing two discs, 20 songs, it would start off with Stereotypes, Charmless Man, Best Days, Entertain Me, Beetle Bum, MOR, You're So Great, Bugman, Coffee and TV, and the closer of Tender. So, how's your journey with Blur?
I was honestly a bit surprised by how much I liked, to be honest with you. I going into it, this is a band that I've heard some stuff from, but there were really only a few songs that I ever really like connected with or enjoyed. But listening to the whole catalog, like honestly, especially those three like Britpop albums, I really enjoyed a lot of the material on them. And yeah, like now, like, I'm somebody that's definitely preferred Oasis over Blur, but now like hearing all the Blur stuff, like I actually think they're much closer for me than I thought they were. So, I feel maybe in the future we can do an Oasis rundown as well and go through some of their albums. But, right now I would say they're pretty damn close for me in terms of which Britpop band I prefer. I think for me, Oasis, the highlights from Oasis, I still would say I prefer, but in terms of like the strongest songs from Blur, I think they're right up there. So yeah, I'm really glad I did this. I discovered a lot of great songs that I think I'm going to be coming back to regularly. I would say at least a dozen of these songs I'm going to be listening to regularly in the future. and maybe even more as I continue to listen to more from Blur. So yeah, I'm glad I did this. It was a lot of fun.
If you had to pick Blur or Oasis right now, you can be
Oasis, Oasis for Live Forever, Slide Away. A lot of great. Yeah, I got to say Oasis
I
still.
think if you look at it in the year 1995, or 96, I guess, if we're gonna allow for What's the Story, Morning Glory. Like those first two albums are like literally biblical. Those are some of the greatest albums of all time. And then at that point, Blur hadn't released self-titled or anything after, and you're looking straight at like the Life trilogy and Leisure. Then was considered like basically two average albums and one masterpiece and one like pretty great one. It was much closer than
Mhm.
like easy. It's easy for me to say now when you look at the entire catalog. Like Oasis, I love two albums, like one, and after that, I still have to like really get into them. I guess I do really like. I guess that's unfair because I do really like whatever one that came out in 2006 that has the song was the importance of being idle or whatever. But that being said, like if I had to pick right now, Blur, because a full catalog, but if I'm talking like 1995, it would be much closer. With my bias, I'd probably pick Blur, but they're both great bands.
Yeah, I feel like I can't compare the full catalogs yet because I've yet to hear the full Oasis catalog. But just judging by like if I'm on a desert island and I can pick one band right now, I would still give Oasis the edge. But the Blur highlights are right up there. But I just think of all these Oasis songs I love, like "She's Electric" and "Don't Look Back in Anger," "Rocking Chair," "Slide Away," "Live Forever." Just like those songs are like so damn good. But again, like from Blur, I mean, "Charmless Man," "Coffee and TV," "Girls and Boys." This is a low. Those are all top tier too. So honestly, yeah, they're pretty damn close, man. They're pretty damn close.
They're very different bands too. It's really hard to compare them.
Yeah,
Like one is
I
like
agree.
this like
Yeah,
artsy, like keyboard driven, not keyboard driven because they have a lot of guitar and stuff, but like you know what I mean, like very artsy. And then you
right.
have a group that is more in line of here's your local guy singing at your local pub kind of songs, and they're very different, and it's hard to label them, which is where like
Would you
the
say it seems like more people give Oasis shit than Blur? Would you say in
oh
terms of
yeah, easily everybody.
like the
There's
whole like,
people in
Beatles
like the
thing and
comments section that will always be like, Blur's the better band, and they don't know a single song by Blur. They just like hating on Oasis. Both great bands. All right, you
yeah,
want to wrap up?
yeah,
All right, thank you for coming to the first official, real channel exclusive. I'll say that channel exclusive episode of Off Time. And if you liked what you saw, subscribe, give a comment, maybe throw in a like. That'd be nice.
mhm.
Um, but we're
And
gonna hopefully down the line do more of these just general discussions about some of our favorite bands. I really like the idea. I could totally see us doing an Oasis episode, and then maybe we could do like a mini-sode of who's better, Oasis or Blur, album by album, if we really want to. We might not go like Beatlesy with like the where we went track by track, but we might be able to do like album by
yeah,
album. Yeah, thank you for joining us. I had a blast talking about the best band of the 90s, Blur. All right, catch you guys.
bye.
Bye.